Jazz age living, whole fashion sipping, pizzazz ain't missing, got the fat cats kissing. Let's bring the old age back. Awake up from his nap, we bring in the.
There you go. Because everybody jumps to the, well, not to, be, I don't even know, I don't want to be, I forget the word, but everyone goes to the smoking gun, basically, which is the last thing, which is, oh, okay, this isn't about the foundational cause of mass shootings. It's the very last step of mass shootings. And that's, oh, well, it has to be AR-15s. Now, I would like to state, do people need an AR-15? No. To me, no, you don't. The NRA loves them because they're super profitable. And sure, yes, I see the freedom argument, but to me, it's like, if that's the case, then I should be able to buy a bazooka too. Like if we're going to go all the way, then I'd rather go all the way with it, because then it's like, oh, okay, we could form our own militia and fight the government. It all goes into the extreme of let's fight the government. So
right.
If that's the case, then I should be able to buy a tank and a bazooka and all this shit then.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not the case. So the fact that you can then buy an AR-15 to me is like one step away from a bazooka.
Right. So I have a few things to say about that. So I used to be a big Second Amendment enthusiast, and I still do defend the Second Amendment. But what's interesting about the Second Amendment is the conception behind it is that the people need to have firepower that could match that of the government. So in case they did have to overthrow the government, they'd be able to do that. Now, that was possible in the 1700s because it was just muskets and cannons. So, but from about, the post-Civil War period, once you started getting these very, very sophisticated, high-powered weapons that would then be used in World War I, the people in this country simply did not have firepower that would match that of the state. The state has fighter jets that can drop bombs and flatten a whole village, and you've got your AR-15. So the whole concept of the Second Amendment, unfortunately, is becoming superfluous, because the people in this country would only be able to fight a guerrilla war, and with the national security apparatus that's being set up, they're not going to stand a chance. Eventually, they're all going to be routed out and defeated. But to tie
my main point is, yes, should the AR-15, no one needs one. That being said, that doesn't answer the question of, okay, why is someone being motivated to go into a shopping mall or a school or a church and do this? And if we ban AR-15s, they're still going to have guns.
And they could make bombs.
Right. So I think it all starts at the foundation of why is this happening?
Right.
And no one starts at the foundation. We all go to the simplest, which is human nature. If we did this super simple thing, then this would eliminate school shootings and church shootings. And to me, it's much more evil than that. It's like, what is the foundational influence that's causing people to think, you know what's a good idea? I'm going to go shoot a bunch of kids in a school.
Yeah. So one thing I'll say starting off here, then I'll get into that psychology of why they do it. So the liberals assume that the accessibility of firearms and the capacity of firearms to inflict mass casualties is a new phenomenon. They think that rose in accordance with the frequency of the mass shootings. And liberals are supposed to be the smart people who understand history. And if that was the case, then they would understand that World War I, over 100 years ago, was an industrial slaughterhouse on a mass scale. So the availability of fully automatic firearms that can mow down tons of people in a very short amount of time have existed for about 100 years. So I made the point in the video. In the 1920s, a kid could have gone into a high school with a Tommy gun, with a drum magazine, that's what the mobsters used, and mowed down their classmates. But it didn't happen. And the study I cited Journal of Family Studies, whatever it was called, there were no mass shootings in the 1940s or 50s or 60s. And then at the end of the 70s, it was 1979, then it started happening, and it was very rare. But then once Columbine happened, you got all these copycats. And so the past 20 years now, they've just been increasing. But the accessibility of firearms and the capability of firearms to inflict mass casualties hasn't changed. So something changed culturally. And that's why I made the case that in all the schools before the 60s, they would pray, even in public schools. So there was this idea that there actually is a standard of right and wrong. It's not just your opinion of what's right and what's wrong. There's a God, and he is the author of morality. And then I cited a couple of those court cases in my latest video. And then they threw out the 10 Commandments from the schools officially in 1980. That was a court case with Kentucky because they wanted to mandate that all the schools had the 10 Commandments. Now, what's interesting about the 10 Commandments, even if you're secular, even if you're not religious, you can still agree with what the 10 Commandments say. It says, you're not God, don't kill, don't steal, don't cheat on your spouse, don't bear false witness. So they're very common sense morals. And you throw that out, and then within just a few years, you have Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, at least Eric Harris, claiming that he's a god. He feels like a god, and he wants to kill all humans. And so this is where I want to get into the philosophy of why they do it, because people say, how could someone do this? How could they kill a bunch of innocent children? Well, it's because these people, they have no foundations, as you were saying. They have no sense of right and wrong. They believe that they're God, and they're nihilistic. They're very, very pissed off at the structure of the universe. You know, they don't have a father in the home typically. And so they decide that, well, life is not worth living. Not only my own, but everyone else's is also meaningless. So they go out with this statement where they want to inflict as much death and as much carnage on the world before they say goodbye. And that's why they always cap themselves off at the end. So it's a profoundly religious statement that they're making, despite the fact that we're in a secular culture. You have these mass shooters, in many cases, saying something that is profoundly religious. And Eric Harris, who shot up Columbine, was the perfect example of it. He set himself up as the supreme judicator over all existence. And he declared that the human race is not worth fighting for. It's only worth killing. He said, give the earth back to the animals. And he thought he was superior because he had come to this grandiose realization and thought it was his mission to try to kill as many people. You know, he didn't forgive, he didn't forget. He wrote that in his journal. They're very disturbing journals. You can find them online, everything he said. And people ask, why would they do this? Well, go read the journal, and they say exactly why they did it. They hate the human race. They want to kill everybody. And what's interesting, because I really emphasize the point of the loss of Christian morality in the schools. The first person who was killed in this chain reaction of mass shootings was a girl named Rachel Scott at Columbine High School. And Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had teased her before about her religious faith because she was a devout Christian. And she had this idea where she would, a little act of kindness would have ripple effects. It would cause a chain reaction, and you would sort of spread goodness throughout the cosmos. And Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, meanwhile, were making videos saying they wanted to start a chain reaction of mass shootings. They wanted to start a chain reaction of death and carnage. So right when they entered school grounds on April 20th, 1999, they shot her as she was sitting outside eating lunch, and she was on the ground wounded. And they went up to her and said, do you still believe in God? And she said, you know I do. And then they shot her dead. So that was the first victim. Now, what's crazy, there were 12 students who were killed on that day, plus one teacher. And that day, in one of her classes, Rachel Scott was drawing a pair of eyes that were crying. And there were literally 13 tears, which watered a blooming flower, a columbine, whatever. I don't know the flower names. And then she wrote on the wall in her house that was discovered later that one day her message would impact millions of people. She wrote in her journal 1 year before her death, I think April 20th, 1998, She wrote in her journal, "My last year, thank you, God." So all these supernatural things happened surrounding her death. And then her funeral was broadcasted on CNN. And her message did have these sort of ripple effects throughout the culture. All these people heard of her story, then read her journals and were inspired by it. So you have something that is actually religious and spiritual going on with these mass shootings, but no one wants to look into it. And I think no one wants to look into it because it's religious, and we don't have religion in our culture anymore. So, and Rachel Scott's father, after the shooting, when he did a hearing in Congress and they asked him about gun control, and he said, this doesn't have anything to do with gun control. This goes all the way back to Cain and Abel in the Bible. This is about someone who is fed up with existence and wants to avenge God by destroying creation. That's Eric Harris. And same thing with the psycho who shot up a sorority house in Isla Vista, Elliot Rodger. He did a video the day before he went on a rampage and killed 6 people where he said humanity is a disgusting, depraved species, and if he had it in his power, he would stop at nothing to reduce everyone to mountains of skulls and rivers of blood. So again, it's they're out for revenge, they're out to destroy, and this is a religious problem. It's not the guns.
Right. And I would say it's also just a lack of investment in education problem too. If you're not into, I could see someone being like, no, the religion thing is not something that we should be pushing or along those lines. But even if you, again, what you said, the 10 Commandments is pretty much standardized of right and wrong, and I think everyone would agree with it. But I mean, there's no investment in education whatsoever. So there's no investment in, hey, let's bring up our kids to be good people. Let's invest in that aspect of it. It's, everything is always cut from education, and then you wonder why animals are the result of not investing in education. And to me, it's just like the lowest common denominator is the gun thing at the end. It's like, look at the start, and then let's try and invest in that. Let's try and invest in, okay, if someone does come from a family where we know that it's hard for them, let's have, some sort of mental health program throughout the school, or how can we help troubled kids? How can we listen to them? But it always just goes to, AR-15.
Mm-hmm.
They would, that person who made the video saying, I want to have a mountain of skulls and a blood river. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be able to do anything without an AR-15.
Yeah, the thing is, he didn't use an AR-15. He used pistols. So,
well, there you go. And by the way, this one specific example, there was nothing in his history. There had been no background check, red flag either. So, Look, it's the simple solution. Does anyone need an AR-15? No. But, the major problem is the foundation in the education system for me.
Yeah, well, I think part of the problem with the education system is the lack of proper moral guidance. Because if you're not allowed to teach anything religious in schools, first of all, what does that mean? Because I think everything's religious. The liberals, the progressives who are the most moralizing people out there, they don't realize that they're making religious arguments. Everything's oppression and racism, sexism, homophobia. The thing I always on what basis do you say that these are all bad? It's an epistemological question, because they say simultaneously that everything is relative. Everything's a social construct. It goes back to that blank slate thing. There's no universal standard of morality. There's no universal standard of right and wrong, good and evil, truth and falsehood, etc. And that's what they teach in the schools now. It's all, that's the whole thing. You do you, man. It's all just your opinion. There is no universal truth. There is no absolute right and wrong. So if you teach young people that, is it any surprise then that someone says, well, I'm God and I say everyone should die? And that's the thing is, that's moral to them. They don't think they're doing something that's evil. They think that well, it's their moral conviction that humanity is a disgusting, depraved species and it should be dispensed with. So again, it's a religious argument, and you cannot defeat spiritual. You cannot win a spiritual fight if you're not willing to fight the spiritual battle. And we are not willing to fight the spiritual battle because people just want to play it easy and say it's the guns. And there's some merit to the claim that, well, it basically happens in this country. You don't have this phenomenon in Ireland. You don't have this phenomenon in Germany. It is an American phenomenon, this idea of the lone wolf taking an AR-15 and killing a bunch of innocent people. It happens all over the world, but there's something uniquely American about the way it happens here. And the case I make is because I do believe in the Second Amendment, but in order to have a Second Amendment, in order to have freedom in general, you have to have a moral people that are disciplined, that have some consensus on what's right and what's wrong, and ultimately they have to have religion in their lives. They have to be spiritually furnished, as I said at the end of my latest video. If you have just this sort of decadent nihilistic society that says anything goes, you do you, man, be whatever you want to be, there's no standard of right and wrong, well, this is what you're going to create. If you mix broken homes, secular liberal values, a very just vulgar pornographic culture with hundreds of millions of guns, people are going to start getting violent. So to put it simply, the question is, it's not what's wrong with the guns. It's, well, what's happening to men in America where they are acting like this? Why are they doing this?
Yeah, and then on the opposite side, on the right side, they don't address it either. Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast, and they're just like, "Well, we need security guards, and we need to have metal detectors, and we need more guns. Basically, we need more security." Again, not addressing the foundational. What's wrong with, like you said, what's happening to these men that is causing them to feel disenfranchised enough to then say, I'm going to go take 19 lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a big issue. And yeah, I've been noticing that this past week too. You flip on Fox News and all they're talking about is how we just need more security at the schools. We need to arm the teachers. And it's interesting. They rant about these crazy teachers teaching the kids about gender pronouns and oral sex, but then they say, let's give them guns. And I just think, no, I don't want the teachers to have guns. I support having more armed security.
How about paying teachers more so that normal people go into that profession?
Perhaps, yeah.
How about that? That could be a good solution as well. Also, the last thing, which it's apparently a controversial statement, is I think they should never, ever report on this in the mass media.
You're saying don't give the shooter's name?
Don't give the name at all.
Yeah, I
never, ever reveal that information.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. The copycat thing is, I mean, it happens every time a serial killer gets attention. There's 20 more people that die because you just gave that guy attention.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Especially in the culture that's been bred in America of look at me.
Mm-hmm. And that's what every shooter wants. They want to have that notoriety, even though they're going to be dead. They want to be remembered for that statement that they made. That was Eric Harris. They knew they were going to kill everyone and then kill themselves, but they thought that they would be hailed as gods. And they knew that this would set off a chain reaction of copycats, and that's exactly what happened. But they all say the same thing. They all say that they're going to be God when they kill everyone. So,
Well, I think we got to the main points we wanted to get to on that. It's a terrible scenario, and I just wish people would focus on the foundational issues other than the very simplistic view of guns, no guns.
Right.
Security, no security. But people can't really understand. You don't want to keep digging further because that involves research and some time and energy. So, thanks for joining today.
Yeah.
I'll reach out again. I was at the Kentucky Derby. I was then in Vegas, and then I had COVID. So I had 3 weeks of no podcasting, but I'm trying to get back into it. So I'll be hitting you up. I think we should do this more often.
Yeah,
as mentioned on prior ones.
Yeah, we'll have to do one where we discuss the war in Ukraine. That's a big topic.
Will do. All right. Well, thanks for joining. We'll go out to Friday night, and I'll see you later, man.
All right.
Peace.
Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might fly away to someplace they don't know who we are. Now I'm riding shotgun in your car. We drive through the city like explorers going 65. Flowing hair flying across your face. We left on Friday, now it's Saturday. Pressed jeans buttoned up, jeans iron slipping up. Red shoes walking slow, headphones blaring 3 stacks. Sunglasses flaring out, thick watch hanging low. Studded belt pulled taut, 3 stacks on the radio. Friday night, I'm thinking that we just might run away to some place we can be who we are. We can be who we are.